Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome once again to our at-home virtual Shabbat service. We have a very special program tonight. Tonight we're going to feature an interview with Sasha Sagan, who was scheduled to be with us back in April when unfortunately we had to cancel it. Sasha Sagan, of course, if you recognize the name, and you should, is the daughter of Carl Sagan and Anne Druyan. Her book, just out in the last few months, is called For Small Creatures Such as We, Rituals for Finding Meaning in Our Unlikely World. It is a book for non-theists about how to celebrate life cycles and all other kinds of rituals. And it's a wonderful interview. She's a terrific person, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. I hope that you will all consider, those of you who are members, of course, joining our new book group. Sasha's book will be featured at our very first session. That will be on June 14th. That's a Sunday, June 14th at 11 a.m. It's all the information is in the newsletter. A couple of other things coming up even sooner. This Sunday morning at 11 a.m., we will be debuting our new film and television discussion series. That will focus on Unorthodox, the Netflix miniseries, again at 11 a.m. And Thursday night, we are celebrating for the very first time Shavuot across the world with humanistic Jews. It begins at 4 o'clock. You can tune in at any time on Zoom. All of the details were in the newsletter. You should have received them as well from SHJ, the Society for Humanistic Judaism. This is open to everyone. It'll be in a webinar format. As it happens, my piece on the stories behind the stories of the Bible will be picked up at 7 p.m. from by the Jewish Live people who are feeding through an ongoing portal of Jewish learning. So I hope you'll join us with that. All right, so to get things started tonight, we'll start with music. And I wanted you all to know that Arthur is sitting here just to my right. He's handling the tech, which is why you don't see a computer in front of me anymore. It's such a delight to be able to do this, and he worked hard learning it, and I thank him. Let's begin with Hine Matov.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, ידדי דדי דדי דדי. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, ידדי דדי דדי דדי. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, ידדי די 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 די. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
We'll continue now as we light the candles, and Arthur is going to take care of that for us. Mm-hmm.
ברוך האור בעולם, ברוך האור באדם, ברוך האור בשלום, בשלום, ברוך האור, ברוך האור בשבת.
This week I've been thinking about gratitude as I think about the book that I just had the pleasure of reading by Sasha Sagan. And so I found some words by an Irish writer, John O'Donoghue. May we keep something beautiful in our hearts to survive difficult times and enjoy good times. May we experience each day as a sacred gift woven around the heart of wonder. May we live each day compassionate of heart, clear in word, gracious in awareness, courageous in thought, generous in love. Blessed be the gifts we never notice, our health, eyes to behold the world, thoughts to countenance the unknown, memory to harvest vanished days, our heart to feel the world's waves, our breath to breathe the nourishment of distance made intimate by earth. Though we are betrothed to the unknown, let us at the end of each day give thanks for being. We'll continue with Efo Ori.
Eifori orivi, eifo tikvati, tikvati vi, eifo kochi, kochi vi, vegam bach, vegam bach, eifo kochi, kochi vi, vegam bach, vegam bach. Where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you.
Let us strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our hearts, with our wisdom, with our actions. These are the ideas that we inscribe in our inmost heart. May we practice them day and night, teaching them diligently to our children through our words and especially through our deeds, so that the next generations learn to revere and celebrate life. So now it is my privilege to present to you this recorded interview that I had earlier today with Sasha Sagan. Sasha Sagan, thank you so much for joining us at our Shabbat gathering here online. It's so nice to virtually meet you. We had planned to have you here in person in April, and I hope that we'll still have that opportunity. I hope it doesn't wait till next April, but who knows?
Absolutely. I was really looking forward to being there, and it's nice to, meet you virtually and hopefully in person in the not too distant future.
You. I just finished your book. I loved your book. I found it to be so inspiring. I just want to say your dad was a hero to me as a youngster. Of course, we all knew him from Cosmos and everything else.
Yeah.
But as I went through my spiritual journey, which involved a lot of dealing with belief in God and all that kind of thing, he was a voice of skepticism. But he was never really a voice of ritual encouragement and that kind of thing. That I didn't find in your dad. What brought you to this appreciation of that? And you describe it in your book, and I hope you share it with us.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's my parents raised me with this enormous sense of wonder and awe, and all the beauty, the appreciation for all the beauty that nature, as seen through the lens of science, as revealed by science, can bring. And that is, for me, has been really fulfilling as a philosophy and a worldview and a source of a lot of joy. But it's missing those rites of passage and celebrations, and maybe most of all, processing grief. The way, the rituals and the things that we must do to process change as human beings. And so my ancestors are all Ashkenazi Jews, and so what my parents did was incorporate some of the traditions of our ancestors without the theism, but with the appreciation for life and for family and for a connection to those who came before us. And that's something that, you know, I could only know my ancestors' names going back, maybe 3 or 4 generations. After that, I don't know their names. I don't know what villages they came from. I really only know that they were Jews. And so, even if it's in a totally different philosophical lens than theirs, lighting a yahrzeit candle or having a Seder, it connects me to what little I do know about them. And my parents really instilled that sense of history in me. And, together, and then with losing my dad when I was 14 and having to sort of navigate that experience without the framework and the infrastructure that religion usually provides really led me to write about what I write about.
What was the biggest discovery as you were doing this research? Just for those who haven't read the book,
Yeah.
it's a wide-ranging discussion of many traditions throughout the world. What was the biggest?
Great question. What I kept coming back to and just being astonished by was this sense that, when you peel back the specifics of time and place and you sort of take away the lore and mythology and theology, the things that we are celebrating as human beings across the globe and throughout time are not only the same markers of changing of the seasons, the solstices and equinoxes, and birth, coming of age, death. It's that they're real scientific events. They're biological and astronomical events. And, the way, we all have our own chauvinisms and the way we see what people do, a couple thousand years ago or a couple thousand miles away, it's so easy to say, oh, that's not like me. But when you look at, for example, a bar mitzvah versus a quinceañera versus the land diving, which is in Vanuatu in the South Pacific, what young men do, this kind of bungee jump into adulthood. And, you have countless versions of the rite of passage, this threshold that gets crossed from adolescence, from childhood to adulthood. And, it's very easy to look at what someone's doing somewhere else and say, oh, that's so remote and foreign to me. But we're all having the same experience of, these hormonal changes and this, totally unnerving physical change and biological and chemical change. And it's central to the existence of the species, right? It's like, okay, another generation is making it, to the age where, they can continue on and they can take the role of the next generation of leaders. And I think that sort of being able to take that lens and examining our own rituals as well as, ones that seem very different and see the parallels rather than the things that maybe alienate us, I think is very powerful. And that's what I kept coming back to, and this idea that there is a kernel of a scientific reality in so much of what we do.
I'm probably one of the few rabbis in the world who ever says that Hanukkah is the Jewish Christmas and
yeah, yes,
Christian Saturnalia.
Right, exactly. I mean, the winter solstice, if anything ever cried out for, it's dark, it's cold, it's miserable, and we know we have months of this ahead of us. We got to do something to take the edge off. And I think like a party is a really good call, and like really good food and, cocktails. I think it's just across the board something that it doesn't require any belief. And like, I feel like Judaism, sometimes we think, oh, well, it's kind of different than other, and it, in certain ways it is. When I take a DNA test, it comes back, it says you're 99.9 whatever percent Ashkenazi Jew, and that doesn't happen if you're like Unitarian or something.
Sure.
But and a lot of people have said to me, oh, well, this is a very Jewish thing to be like, I'm part of this culture, but not the religion. And I think, there are so many people who celebrate Christmas in a secular way. And maybe that's not, for people who are very devoutly Christian, maybe that's not great. But we do all have this relationship, or many of us do have this relationship that is like, well, there's the traditions and the stuff you love because it reminds you of your grandparents, and then there's the stuff that's theological, and sometimes those part ways, but we still carry on the traditions with a maybe more science-focused modern philosophy.
I'm sure you've never considered becoming a secular humanistic rabbi, but you'd be pretty damn good at it.
Thank you. That's so nice. My mother did once say to me that I should become a rabbi. And of course, she met a secular rabbi. So it's not that it's never crossed my mind. Maybe I'll when my daughter's a little older, I'll have to consider going back to school. Not out of the question.
All I can say is you would be a very welcome addition.
Thank you.
The navigating of these kinds of traditions and the ways that they connect you with your daughter and clearly with the generation that will come after, and then the way they connect you to your parents, and even you speak about inhabiting, I think it's your grandmother's
yes.
reality, and that's
yes.
When you had the opportunity to play her in a scene on The New Cosmos. And yet you also speak about the change and evolution of these kinds of things. Do you see some tension there? Some people do.
Yes, I mean, there is tension. And I think everybody has that feeling of like, well, I don't want to be the one to break the chain. If people have been doing whatever it is, making this dessert, whatever it is for 6,000 years, or whatever we imagine, there is that pressure, even if nobody is breathing down your neck, saying you have to continue the tradition. You do feel like that sense of not wanting to be the first to break the mold. But on the other hand, I think even the most devout, even the most traditional people alive today, whatever they're doing, it's just not identical to what people were doing 1,000 years ago, a couple hundred years ago, and I think there is really a metaphor here that relates to science, which is that for something to survive, it must adapt and evolve. And there is, my mother always says, and I always quote her, there is no refuge from change in the cosmos. We have to take, every generation, there is a slight, perhaps an imperceptible change, but in order to continue something on, we have to make it work for us. We can't be imprisoned by it. And so we have to each take what is meaningful to us and celebrate that. And, if my daughter doesn't, she's not yet 3, but when she grows up, if she decides not to do any of this, I just feel like, and we'll see how I feel in 20 years, like, but for right now, my hope for myself is that my attitude will be, well, that's none of my business. I don't want to, I'm not doing the things that I do, the traditions I carry on, I'm not doing them because I feel obliged. I'm doing them because they're meaningful to me. And the ones that are not, I can let fall away. And I just hope that, for me, I think the traditions and rituals are a way to process change. It's the way we humans grapple with the constant upheaval. I mean, now maybe more than in a long time, but constant change and processing the passage of time is so difficult, and again, maybe now more than ever, right? Every day feels like that weird week between Christmas and New Year's where it's like, what day is it? I'm in my pajamas. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I think that we have to do the traditions and the rituals that we do, not because we're worried we'll disappoint someone else, but because they're meaningful and helpful to us. And if they're not, then that's okay, because there have been a lot of belief systems and a lot of cultures and a lot of philosophies over the course of this species, and none of them go on forever.
That's the core of what we try to do as humanistic Jews. And we also recognize that there are people who have many heritages to draw from. That'll be a unique piece of your daughter's experience, not yours. Does that affect how, well, I know it does in the book, so I apologize for asking.
Spoiler, no.
Can you talk about a little bit how you navigated that with your husband?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband's not Jewish. And we have the same philosophical outlook. We're both secular, but he grew up with Christmas and like the things that in Easter and the things that, you know, mark the changing of the seasons are different for him than they were for me. And, you know, I really think, I do think that, I mean, we do both. You know, we have Christmas with his family, and we actually my mother did Easter eggs with me when I was little, even though we weren't Christian, as I write about in the book, because it was very pagan to her. So that's like not even that, you know, scandalous for me.
I loved our Easter egg hunts as a kid.
Yes, totally. I mean, that is so much about nature. I mean, that has nothing to do with the resurrection. That is just totally springtime. But you know, my daughter like is going to have to navigate this, and I want to present all the options to her and let her choose. I do sometimes feel like, well, I don't have to put as much effort into like making Christmas a thing because it's everywhere, and she will get some of it from the culture in this way that I feel like I have to emphasize. You know, I'm sure anyone who's a member of any minority group has the sense of like, okay, well that you have to sort of underline some of that stuff, because the rest of the, you know, out in the world, she'll find that, you know, she Santa will become clear to her. But that's something where like we've, you know, she was like, she's, you know, this past December, she was like, like maybe mid-December, a guy rode by on a bike in a Santa suit, and she was like, who's that guy? And I was like, okay, this is happening. And so we kind of took the approach of like, he's like a Christmas character. Like, you know, we're not doing like chimney stuff, but like he's a character. Like at Halloween, we have like witches and we have different characters. And like, this is part of the iconography of this time. And he's sort of interesting. And, you know, I don't want to make it taboo, but it's just like navigating all this stuff. I think all of this like rituals and celebrations, the easiest way I think to look at it is like, these are performance art pieces, and maybe that's not how you describe it to a toddler, but these are performance art pieces that we do. And just like art, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people, and we're sort of, you know, enjoying part of it. We can look at some of the things critically, the way that we would look at art, and just say, this is how we mark this time, and this is what we're trying to navigate. And it's fun and it's amazing, and how great that sometimes people dress up in costumes randomly.
I love that idea of performance art. I had never thought about what I do with all these rituals as performance art, but that's what it is.
And it's like at a wedding, you know, you can really see it, right? This is like this thing. And it's so funny because we see, you know, we don't see it as like a play, but it is a play. It is, and it has all the elements of theater of like, this is, you know, you have a costume and you have lines and you have a set, and these are things you work on and create together and rehearse, right? Rehearsal dinner, right? Like all of these things. And it's like, and I think there's a connotation that if something's art or a play, that it's not real. But I think that that's how we tap into some of the most truly deepest, realest parts of human existence.
The time is running short, and I could do this for
all day,
and was looking forward to doing
yes.
this.
we will
at one point. But I guess what I would like to close with is if you have, because you did bring it up, this time that we're going through.
Yes.
Are there rituals, traditions, things that you're being particularly punctilious about, or that you're looking at, or that are helping you?
Yes, it's so interesting because I think the two things that I keep coming back to are, you know, yoga and meditation. Like I do like a yoga YouTube video in the morning, and my daughter does it with me, and we do that. And like, that's something that came out of a religious tradition and has taken on a secular life of its own. And now, as like the days run together and we don't have the rhythm that we normally had, being like, okay, I'm getting up, I'm doing this thing, we're doing this thing together to start the day or to close the day, you know, many people do. Like, I think there's something about that that's so important, even if it's 10 minutes long. And it's like, you know, I think there's something really powerful in that. And I think so many people are tapping into that. And maybe it doesn't feel like a tradition or like a ritual, but I really think it is. And then the other thing we've started doing is we live in the center of a small city, and normally on the weekends, when things were normal, we would take our daughter to the aquarium and museums and things like that. But not now, obviously. And but we discovered that like 20 minutes away, there's a national park that the facilities are closed, but the trails are still open, and it's not very busy. So we've been going there every weekend and going on a little hike, and our daughter loves it. And she started saying, when things go back to normal, can we still go to the forest? And we were like, yes. And we're sorry that we didn't do this sooner. And like, we've started listening to this audiobook by this Japanese doctor, Quing Lee, called Forest Bathing, about the scientific effects of spending time in the forest and why it's really good for you. And it's been really fascinating. And so to have something that's daily and have something that's weekly, even if it's not religious or explicitly religious, even if it's not overt in the sense of like the way a ritual feels when you're lighting a candle or something, I think we are all doing things that are tapping into what we really connect to and what's really important to us in this strange time.
That's beautiful. Thank you. One of the things that's helped me is the both responsibility and the pleasure of getting to continue Shabbat, even though it's in this weird kind of context. So I thank you, and I wish you Shabbat Shalom. And
Thank
we look
you.
forward to the time we can be together in person.
Me
Thank
too.
you so much for joining me for this.
My pleasure. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was a lot of fun to conduct that interview. I'll remind you all that, again, on the 14th of June, I want to get my dates right because I've goofed them up before on this service. On the 14th of June, we will be initiating our book club and discussion group. You still have plenty of time to get this book. There are a couple of links under the video, one to a great organization called bookshop.org that's helping independent booksellers. Of course, if you have a Kindle, you got to go to Amazon, and there's a link there too for the hardcover and for that. And I want to also acknowledge Dr. Fran Shore, who brought this idea of a book club to our new programming committee, and will be leading this particular discussion. So we'll now continue with our service, and I'm going to move on to a reading by Wendell Berry that I find gives me a certain amount of peace of mind during these uncertain times. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Nase Shalom.
Nase Shalom, Shalom Ba'olam. Nase Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam ve'imru Shalom. Nase Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam
In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support, those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight, we turn our well wishes towards these members of our community and their loved ones: Cece Stone, Joan Mann, Patty Becker, Titus Mendel, Lonnie Fleischer, Karen Tremper Harris, Linda Brody, Larry Fisher, Jennifer Breen, Anne-Marie Kersniak, Greg Lowenthal, Robert Liebhaber, Alan Mish, and Celia Roth. May all who suffer know that they are not alone. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a complete recovery, refuah shlema, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits.
מקום הכוח בתוכנו, מקורות הברכה מחברותינו. May the source of strength that dwells so deep within us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Shalom. מקום הכוח בתוכנו, מקורות הברכה מחברותינו. May those in need of healing know refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Shalom.
Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people, a nation, whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight, we observe the yahrzeits of Sally Eder, Max Halpern, Marvin Cherish, Asher Finkel, Harold Malinsky, Eli Bricker, Ann Ellenbogen, Eddie Handelman, Harold Dennenberg, Aaron Fryer, Morton Fryer, Gertrude Fryer Wax, Edith Goldstone, Irving Reiter, Clara Roman, Bertha Zucker, Jacob Zucker, Herbert Goldstone, and David Kahn. Our hearts are also extended to the millions of people who have been affected by the illnesses or deaths of those who have succumbed to this horrible virus. Yehi zichram livracha, may their memories provide us with a source of comfort as we go about our lives in their absence. So that's our service for this evening. In a moment, we'll conclude with a song called May We Know Peace. It's actually an adaptation, of course, of a Debbie Friedman song. I want to once again remind you that this Sunday at 11 a.m., we will on Zoom, and the link was in our newsletter, we will be discussing Unorthodox at the launch of our new new film and television discussion group. We'll be meeting monthly to have different discussions about not just Jewishly oriented films, but a lot of different kinds of things. So bring your thoughts about this. This is not a lecture. This is a discussion group, though obviously I have some things to say. Thursday night is Shavuot. taking advantage of an opportunity provided by these difficult circumstances. The Society for Humanistic Judaism will be on Zoom at 4 o'clock. We anticipate hundreds of participants. My segment on the stories behind the stories in the Bible, Shavuot, of course, being, among other things, according to tradition, the celebration of the revelation of Torah at Sinai, but for us, the revelation at Sinai, which didn't happen, but nevertheless, a series of books that we now call the Bible that did happen and exist and are nonetheless very important to us as literature. So I go on at 7. You can tune in at any time. There's even a wonderful section for children in it. And we will, of course, be merging with Jewish Live, the portal of Jewish learning at that time. And finally, of course, Sasha Sagan's book will be the subject of our very first book club, led by Fran Shore, on Sunday, June 14th at 11 a.m. We'll conclude now with this beautiful tune, which we call May We Know Peace. Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
May we know peace as we go on our way. May we be guided by love. May we be possessed of health and joy. May this be our future. Shalom. Shalom, shalom. May this be our future. Shalom. Shalom, shalom. May this be our future. Shalom. May we feel sheltered by the wings of peace. May we abide in safety and in love. May grace and compassion find their way to everyone. May this be our future. Shalom. Shalom, shalom. May this be our future. Shalom. Shalom, shalom. May this be our future. Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend as we remember all those who gave their lives for our nation and for so many others. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.